Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel to spend some time with me on the video. Always very grateful for that. And guys, today in preparation for the fall bass fishing coming up right around the corner, I'm going to show you one technique that you can have the best fall fishing you've ever had if you learn how to master this technique. I'm going to go over how to fish it, how to set it up, the equipment to throw in it, and it's just going to be a great technique to add to your arsenal if you've never done it before. Also, guys, two quick things I wanted to remind you of is that SolarBat has a August sale on my SolarBat series RB2 and RB3 series sunglasses. You can get them at 20% off during the month of August, as well as anything else on the SolarBat website. So I'll put my SolarBat link in the description there if you guys would like to check that out. And also, please check out our Fish the Moment lake map breakdowns in preparation for fall. We got a bunch of great fall map breakdowns on the website. I'll include the link in the description for that as well, so really appreciate that. Okay guys, the technique that I want to talk about that's going to allow you to have the best fall you've ever had before, if you start preparing for it now and start getting ready for it and just sort of follow some of the guidelines I'm talking about, is ripping a spinnerbait, burning a spinnerbait. This is sort of a forgotten technique, but guys, this is my #1 way to catch bass in the fall time of the year, is old school burning a spinnerbait. The second biggest bass I ever caught in a Bassmaster tournament, I caught one that weighed 9 pounds down at Lake Lanier. I think it was in 1992. Kevin Van Dam won the tournament, and I caught a 9-pounder with a 21-pound bag at Lanier, which was huge back then, burning a spinnerbait. That was the first week of December, and it's produced tons of good fish for me, so we're going to get into that. Now, first of all, let's talk a little bit about the bait, and then I want to go into how to fish it as far as retrieve it. And then finally, we'll wind up talking about the type of areas that you want to fish it in. Now, a ripping spinnerbait is different from a traditional spinnerbait. This right here, guys, is the #1 ripping spinnerbait on the market. This is the Megabass SV3 spinnerbait. I'll include this spinnerbait link in my Tackle Warehouse description if you guys want to pick up a couple. This is a ripping spinnerbait. It's got a fish head design. It's designed to run perfectly straight at high speeds, because the biggest drawback of a burning, ripping spinnerbait technique is very few spinnerbaits will stay completely true when you burn them. Most of them will run off to the side a little bit when they start getting real too fast. But the way the Megabass SV3 is balanced, and with the fish head design and the blade configuration, it just stays straight as a string all the way through the water. Also, you got 2 small willy blades. You got a #3 here on this one. Probably #2 on that one, 2 small willy blades. I prefer the silver. And then the cool thing about this, you got a hand-tied skirt and the trailer is already in it. And the point of a ripping spinnerbait, it has to be a finesse spinnerbait that looks like a shad. And that's why I really like the natural trailer that comes with the SV3 spinnerbait, along with the translucent skirt, different color combinations. So spinnerbait is critical. Also, most of the time I use a 3/8 or 1/2 ounce size. This is the 1/2 ounce model here. I probably would prefer a 1/2 ounce model over 3/8 because you can cast it further and cover more water, but this is the setup here. Coupled with that is you need some type of a longer rod, like something at least 7'2" in a rod with some type of like a medium heavy action. 7-to-1 bait cast reel, and I usually pair it up with 15-pound test Seaguard and VizX fluorocarbon line. So that's my setup with it there. Now, retrieving it, let's talk a little bit about retrieving it here. One of the big things about retrieving a burning spinnerbait is the key on this thing is to keep it just under the surface, but you don't want to really break the blades with it. You don't want the blades to break the surface. You want the blades to create a little bulge, but not a constant bulge. So in other words, when this spinnerbait's coming through the water, you want to reel it just under the surface enough, where occasionally you see like a little water boiling behind it, but then you drop it down just a hair and you lose that. Keep it in sight the whole time. You want to definitely keep it visible coming through the water. Sometimes you're going to lose sight of it because sometimes if the wind's blowing or the sunlight is at a different angle, you lose sight of the bait. But in other words, you want to keep it just under the surface, just to the point where it starts to boil the water. That's the key thing. Guys, I can't stress this enough. If you fish the spinnerbait, if you throw this out there and just reel it in and it goes a foot underneath the water, you're not going to catch hardly anything on it. If you throw it out there and it's 6 to 8 inches under the water, you're not gonna hardly catch anything. You need to keep it like that far under the water where it's literally right at the surface but not breaking the surface. That's a little bit harder. It's a little bit easier said than done, and that's one of the things that you can practice with right now is to get that spinnerbait where you've got that bulge and wake, disappear, bulge again, disappear. And it takes a little bit of practice to do that. Now, one of the things that will enable you to do that is your rod angle. The rod angle is really key to this. So normally what I do is, I'll make my cast out there, and as soon as that lure hits the water, I'm reeling fast with the rod tip high, because when the spinnerbait hits the water, naturally it's gonna sink a little bit. So as soon as that bait hits the water, you wanna get it moving and you wanna get it up to the surface, and you do that by keeping the rod tip high. Now, based upon the distance of the cast and the angle of the cast, usually you're gonna have to adjust your rod positioning, because what happens usually, you make the cast out there, your rod tip's high to get it started, and then you have to keep your rod tip high enough to keep the bait close to the surface while your bait is way out there. But as your bait gets closer to the boat, like halfway to the boat, you gradually have to drop your rod, because if you keep reeling too fast with the rod tip high, your blades are gonna break the surface. So you sort of have to get this, it takes a little bit of practice. Start out high, and then you gradually are coming down just like that to the point where you're almost parallel to the water. And that's how you maintain the exact depth of the spinnerbait to come through the water. Main thing, the biggest mistake I see, because I've taken a bunch of people out there to teach them how to burn a spinnerbait, and the number one mistake all of them make is they let the spinnerbait go too deep, and they never catch anything. So this is one of the things you can practice at right now. Practice your cast of different lengths, practice getting that spinnerbait moving. And you don't want to like reel it so fast that it's just the fastest you can. You just want to reel it. It's like I consider it like a high, medium, fast retrieve. You want to reel it fast enough to go through the water where it's just underneath the surface, which requires quite a significant amount of speed, considering the fact that these two small willow leaves, they don't lift a lot. They're small, so a big blade, like a big large Colorado or a big willow leaf, tends to lift the spinnerbait. So you don't have the natural lift, and the heavier head on there requires you to keep that speed up, and that's what you really want. Most of the time, guys, if I can get away with it, I will not use a trailer hook. The Megabass spinnerbait SV3, it's got a nice keeper there. I don't use any type of a trailer on the spinnerbait since it already has a natural trailer. But the spinnerbait trailer hook behind it, one of the things that I have found out about in my burning spinnerbait experience, and I've been burning spinnerbait since the early 90s, is that when you put a trailer hook on, even if you put a small trailer hook on, it reduces the amount of strikes you get. So here's sort of what I found. If I go out on a day's fishing, say I'm practicing, and I get 20 bites on a spinnerbait with no trailer hook on it, most of the time I'm gonna land most of those fish. Maybe once in a while one will hit it and not get it. But if I go out there with a trailer hook, say in the tournament, and I want to put a trailer hook on for extra insurance because I want to get those short strikers, I can expect my bites to go down 25%. You wouldn't think that it would, but it does. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe the fish can key on it. Maybe they can see it. I don't know what it is, but I've noticed a noticeable decline in the amount of strikes you get with a trailer hook, even with a small trailer hook. So one of the things that got me confidence fishing a spinnerbait without a trailer hook was watching Jimmy Houston, because I remember he did really good up at a tournament at Lake Champlain back in the 90s, burning a spinnerbait up there for those big smallmouth, and he wasn't using a trailer hook. And I think he even mentioned something about that. He was just using the straight spinnerbait. So the good thing about it on a small profile spinnerbait like this SV3 is they usually get it when they got it. So try to stay away from a trailer hook if possible. Okay, now as far as what you want to fish it, this is the meat and the potatoes of the presentation here, because you've got to fish it on the right type of stuff. Shade is critical. It's like shade and low light are both critical in correlation with the right water clarity and the right temperature. This is a clear water technique, so it's not going to work. If you have water visibility that's under 3 feet, it's not going to be that productive for you. You need at least 3 foot of clarity, and I prefer, in that 4 to 6 foot range of clarity is my perfect preference. 4 to 6 foot of visibility is ideal. You can get away with a little bit more, a little bit less, but 4 to 6 is perfect. And with that, it's like the light intensity is critical to get these fish to come up on it. In the fall time of the year, this is an early morning deal. It's like it works the best right off the bat in the morning. It's like as soon as you get out there, sun's coming up and there's a lot of shade on the water, those fish will come up and hit that spinnerbait really good. And as that sunlight angle gets up, they get off it a little bit more and a little bit more. That's why you really have to chase the shade. So let's say you're out there, it's the last part of November, you know, the water clarity is 4 to 6 feet, and it's a partly cloudy day, and you're catching a few the first couple hours, and the sunlight gets up, and you start losing your sunlight, your shade on the banks. Start gravitating towards those banks that still have shade on it, especially with wind. This is another key factor. As the sun gets higher, the wind becomes more important. You may not have to have wind right off the bat in the morning when the light levels are low, but up in the day when that sun comes up, even in the shade, it's really, really gonna help you, catch a lot more fish, because those fish will just come up on it better in wind and shade. So go out there and look, try to pay attention to the part of the lake that catches shade more as the day goes on. So let's say, for example, you're back in a major creek arm. Depending upon how that creek arm is positioned in relationship to the sun angle, there's going to be certain areas within that creek that they're going to hold shade more. Find those areas and just run down that creek and just look for shade pockets. The structure itself is not as important as the shade. This is one of the most important aspects of it. You can catch them on literally any type of structure in the fall. I've caught them on bluff banks, on 45-degree angle banks, on flat pea gravel. I've caught them on points. I caught them in the backs of the coves. It's a matter of covering water and chasing that shade. But the ideal situation, there's two primary areas that I really like for it. Number one is any type of point. These fish, right off the bat in the morning, that's my number one target, is I run as many shady points as I can. Just boom, 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 boom. Pull up on a point, make 10 casts, pull up the trolling motor, run to another point. Just trying to hit as many of them before that sun comes up. And then as that sun comes up, that's when I look for the steeper banks, because those steeper banks, and the bank doesn't, the composition doesn't make any difference. It's all about the bank angle. I chase those steep banks because those steep banks are going to hold shade longer. So my next approach is I run as many of those shady banks that I can, and then the rest of the day, it's just all about finding shade. Sometimes you lose it and you can't find it again. Sometime this pattern, by 10 or 10:30 in the morning, it's completely over. If you do get a cloudy, rainy day, perfect situation, they'll bite it all day long. And the perfect water temperature for this is going to be when that water temperature is anywhere between the upper 50s to the mid 60s. Sort of like that 57 to 67 degree range would be ideal. So if you gave me, say, Randy, what's the perfect spinnerbait lake, the perfect spinnerbait situation? It would be a clear water lake that had, some different type of variations in rock, 4 to 6 foot of visibility, water temperature right around 60 degrees. A cloudy day was to be perfect, with about a 10 to 15 mile an hour wind. I can promise you guys, there is not a lake in the country. You can put me on any lake in the country in the fall time of the year when the water temperature is 60, water visibility is 4 or 5 foot. I got some shade, I got some rocky mixed rock, and I'll catch them burning a spinnerbait. Any place in the country it'll work. So anyway, give them a try, guys. Megabass SV3, #1 ripping spinnerbait. Don't even waste your time looking for another one. This is the best one you're gonna find. Again, I'll put it in the Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video, and really appreciate you guys tuning in. See y'all.